Bonnie, thank you so much for coming here all the way from Las Vegas.
My pleasure.
How was that trip?
Great.
It was great. So Bonnie, could you tell us a little bit about when you became an engineer? About what time was that?
It was in '74 when I first got hired out. That's right when women was starting to, and I mean I didn't know about it. I just had a road foreman say that the railroad was going to have to start hiring women. And he said, why don't you put your application in? And I said, well, gee, do you think I can do it? And he says, yeah, you can do it. So I said, okay. And then I got thinking about it. And the more I thought about it, I thought that would be great because they made such good money. I used to hand the guys their paychecks. And I thought if I could just make money like that for a month, would be good. Because the guys always made well. Because a clerk, he was kind of limited. So anyway, but it was because of the movement of women back then. They didn't just do it because you needed a job.
Right. So you didn't start at the railroad as an engineer.
No, I was a clerk.
And so when did you first hire on with the railroad?
In 1966.
66, and so you were a clerk, and then it was not until 74 then until you became an engineer.
Yeah.
So what prompted the change? You wanted to become an engineer because...
I wanted to make more money.
Yeah,
I was a clerk. He was stagnant. I could sit there and figure how much money I was going to make for the whole year.
Right.
And then you figure out what your bills was, and you figure out what's less.
Right.
When you got nothing to do and you're working nights and you got a scratch pad in front of you. And it's very depressing when you don't have too much to work with.
Right.
Because when you're, well, like anyone, when you have no seniority, you don't get the higher paid jobs or the overtime that go to seniority.
Right.
So you're kind of stagnant. You work people's vacations. And so it was 8 years, and I was kind of just really getting bored. I liked the railroad, but I was delivering crews, calling crews. I wasn't too much for office help. I work it if I had to, but I kind of like being out. I'm a cowgirl. I got horses. I like wearing boots and jeans and a hat and everything.
Right.
So then when I heard about the engine service, I got thinking about it, and then say, oh, do you think you can do it? And I said, I knew they'd train you. Railroad's no problem. They don't let you go till you're ready.
Right.
They train you at no expense. I remember when I was in class, they always had the same question. They always would come back to me. Well, what would you do if you get a red signal and you couldn't go? How long would you wait? And you have guys say, oh, I'd blow the whistle, I'd go by. I go, no, I'd wait. They'd come get me. Well, you've been there now. It don't matter. I said, don't come looking for me. I just sit there till they come because that's what you did.
Right.
And the railroad, that's what I loved about the railroad. Bar no expense. One time I had a boss get on the train and he was doing something, and I said, gee, you can do, I said, gee, you can do that. Well, I can do anything I want. The railroad pays. And I love that. And I kept that in my mind the rest of my life. If you got the money, you could do anything you want. Legally, but you just pay.
Yeah,
you just pay.
Okay. So when you first started, what were some of the attitudes of your coworkers? Like you said, they were worried you might not be able to handle it.
Well, the road foreman didn't want to take responsibility. Sure. I know guys younger than me got qualified before me, and they'd send them out as riders. And I was older than they were, but they were still sending them as a rider, and I was going to work, and you got these people standing over you. You just want to be by yourself. I was ready. Right. I remember one time I came into the roundhouse and worked a local, and the youngest engineer in the system was my rider. And he started saying, well, he was qualified, and the old head engineer came in and said, this ain't going to last. There ain't no way Union Pacific Railroad is going to have two equally qualified people in the same job. And finally, I went to work, and there was no rider. So I thought I was cutting a fat hog. So I went to work, and I thought, once I pull this shift, then I'm qualified. Come to find out, they qualified me, but no one gave me the courtesy of a phone call.
Oh, no.
And that's what I found on the whole career. You was treated differently. The guys could talk, and they'd help each other out, but I was left out in the cold. You was on your own. You didn't even have the deal of going to a bar with them after work and talking about problems that you could hash over because you was by yourself.
Right.
And so I was fine, but that's just the way it was. But it was just that it didn't bother me, but some women it did. They could. And later on, if someone spoke loud to them or got mad, they'd quit. Like one time a road woman said this one girl, she said, I'm going to ride with you till you're qualified. And she quit. Well, I just said, bring her lunch. One time I was working, I made a little boo-boo, and the train master called. When he first started coming with cell phones, so he called my conductor to hand me his phone, because he had a phone, I didn't. And when I got done, I said to my conductor, you just paid for that chewing out, because he paid for the minutes. But anyway, the road foreman said to me, he said, and I'll see you, and he's reading me the riot act. Of course, I was real apologetic, you know. Never do that again, I promise. And he said, I'll see you when you come to work. And at that time, I was working every 8 hours.
Right.
That was right when the merging and the railroads just couldn't get enough help.
Right.
And I said, all I said was, You're going to be there that early? And then that's when he called on the phone and says, read me a riot act again. And I said, and then I didn't see him. Because it was going to be like 4 in the morning I was going to be show. As soon as I went home, 8 hours later, I was going to be back on the job.
So you worked as much as you possibly could.
Yeah, and at the end, they called me the Roy. One superintendent called me the road warrior.
Yeah.
Guys couldn't keep up. Then they worried about what I did with my money. What is Bonnie doing with her money? They asked his boyfriend. I had it, and he said, "God, she's buying property, putting in wells because I was getting income tax because I was using it for my retirement." Right. And it was at the end of my career. It was easy. I raised my daughter. It was hard going to work, raising a kid. Have to get live-in babysitters, planning ahead of time, coming in, clothes. I mean, if I went to work on a Thursday, I had a plan for Friday. And if you went to work, say you had a plan for Monday. You always had to plan it way in advance. I used to be jealous of guys that all they did was show up. All they had was a T-shirt. They showed up to work, and I look at them and go, "Wow!" I have my hair. I washed my hair, took a bath. I have the kid going with all his stuff. So at the end, when all I had to do was show up for myself, my daughter was grown. This is so easy. Just go to work.